You're all set.
So we're good to go. Great. Welcome. This is the regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting for June 3rd, 2024. It is 6:13. We have voting members for Finance, Councilor Yakabaga, Councilor Dean, and Councilor Leonard, and myself. Joined at the table is Council Chair Pelletier and Councilor Hawes and Finance Director Dave Little. First up, bids and purchasing.
Thank you. Our first item tonight is a request to waive the bid process to purchase network data switches for three departments: the Water Quality Department, the Airport, and the Cross Insurance Center. The reason we're looking to request to waive the bid process is for approximately 20 years, the city used Dell switches for all of our systems. Dell discontinued manufacturing and supporting and selling switches. Their recommendation was, if you wanted a compatible switch without changing your entire system, to go to an Extreme switch. Consolidated Communication is the only local vendor that sells that Extreme switch that has a value added reseller, and it is who Extreme recommends purchasing the switches through. So it's essentially, it's like we're treating it like a sole source, but there are other vendors nationwide that could sell that switch, but if we went out to bid locally, we're probably only going to get Consolidated to be the only one, because we're very limited to the style of switch that we can use without updating our entire networked system. So the entire cost was $109,385. By lumping the three departments together, we did save 14% than borrowing them separately. The wastewater treatment plant's a little over 31,000. The airport's a little over 31,000. A little over 46,000 for the Cross Center. And all of that money is already in the operating budgets of those departments or within the capital budget that's already been approved for fiscal year 24. So we're looking for permission to move forward with a contract with Consolidated to purchase those switches, which will also update the Wi-Fi availability and service within those three departments. So we're looking for approval to move forward.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or a motion? Councilor Leonard.
I'll make that motion, but I do have a question for you. Do you foresee any issues related to, because of the discontinuance of the Dell switches and going to the Extreme switches, that anything else we might have to switch out in the future?
Not yet. We have been buying some Extreme switches already. They seem to be compatible. Everything seems to be okay. We're just in our cycle to start replacing some of them. The current ones that we're replacing with this one are 13 years old. But we have been purchasing them as we can throughout the departments. Everything seems to be okay. We're just hoping that Extreme doesn't stop at some point and we'll have to find another one.
Roger that.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any other comments? All right.
Thank you. Our next item is also a request to waive the bid process for a similar scenario. This is to replace security cameras down at the Cross Insurance Center, approximately 15 cameras, along with of new cameras, repurposing 5 existing cameras along with the installation. Our recommendation is to go with Norris Minuteman of Saco. They are our current security camera vendor. They've installed most of our security system. They understand how we work, how we're networked, how all the cameras are linked together. Bringing in somebody new or going out to bid for this particular product would, there'd be a large learning curve of anybody coming in that would need to learn how the system operates. Norris is also our we use them for maintenance and we use them for troubleshooting and we use them for any emergency situations that we have. So we'd like to continue with them on this purchase. The cost of all of those cameras along with installation is $39,798, which is included in the capital budget for the Cross Insurance Center.
Great, thanks. Questions, comments, or a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. No doubt.
Thank you.
Forward.
Our next item is for a ditch rehabilitation on the Balsam Road for stormwater mitigation. and collection. This is from the engineering department on behalf of the stormwater management. And our city engineer, John Terrio, did a bid request by email. He emailed out to 12 local contractors that are capable of doing this type of work that we were looking to get done. He only received 2 responses back. Of those 2, there was one from Hughes Brothers and from CNC Lynch. Hughes Brothers was the lower of the 2 at $66,529, which is under our estimated budget for the project of $75,000. They have the expertise in order to do the project, and our past experience with them has been excellent, so we have no concerns that they're not able to do the work. So we would like permission to move forward and contract with Hughes Brothers for that ditch rehabilitation for $66,529.
Great, thanks. Questions, comments, or a motion?
I make a
So moved.
motion.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. No objections? Move
Thank you.
forward. Right off of personal property taxes.
So for new counselors, this may be the first time that you're seeing this, is during the budget process, there is an account that is called overlay. That is required to be part of the budget process, and what it's used for is to handle any personal property adjustments, write-offs, assessment of abatements that happen throughout the year, hardship abatements as well, all go against that account. Some years we have big abatements and some years we have very few abatements. So we take a look at it near the end of each fiscal year, and if there's a balance left in the account, we use that and come forward with a request to write off uncollectible personal property accounts. Personal property taxes in the state of Maine are difficult to collect. They don't have a automatic lien process like real estate taxes do. There is a lien process that you can go through, but the lien does not mature. It actually expires after like 5 years and you have to continue to renew it. You could take the property owners to court, which the city used to do. We would get a nice sheet of paper that said we won and called it a judgment, but it didn't collect any money. Those would just sit in a drawer without further legal action. And even then it's limited to what you can get paid. So the city does what it can for collection efforts. We do send out past due notices. All of our bills show what's past due. If the business is required to get a license from the city of Bangor, we will withhold approval of the license until they pay their personal property taxes. Unfortunately, not all businesses need a license. So we always end up with some that are just uncollectible. These are typically accounts that are closed businesses, sold businesses, because unfortunately, unlike real estate taxes that are attached to a property, it's very difficult to make a new owner pay for someone's personal property taxes, even if they bought the equipment. We can try to do that, but again, it would require going to court, spending money for in court cases to attempt to collect that. So what we do is we go through and look at the accounts. There's approximately $240,000 still sitting in the overlay account. Our tax collector looked at personal property taxes of accounts that are no longer being assessed because they fit one of those categories that we talked about. This is something we've been doing like for a number of years to clean up our personal property. So we're only down to around 32 accounts now. And we're looking at requesting about $20,600 to be used out of that overlay account to write those off. Of those 32 accounts, they average out to about $644 in per account. Some are higher, some are lower, but on average it's $644. So we're looking for approval to use the overlay to write off $20,600 in what is deemed to be uncollectible personal property accounts. Important to note that we also like to bring up in total, if you look at all of our personal property taxes as a whole, that's been assessed and been collected, our collection rate over time is roughly 99% on personal property taxes. So some years it can look like a very large number on these write-offs, but in the scope of what we actually bill out, it's less than 1%. And as we do with, we've had some turnover in our legal department. So we'll talk with our new legal staff as well on their views on or any ideas that they may have regarding new efforts to collect personal property. We'll also continue to monitor legislation that may change personal property collection efforts. We're lucky that our tax base is not heavy on personal property. We're not a community that has one single super large taxpayer that if they went out of business, we would take a significant hit. So we have a very broad tax base, so we're able to do stuff like this.
Thank you, but it's not a big amount. How much time are we spending trying to collect on?
We're
32.
spending more than $644 per account, yes.
Yeah,
We do, I mean, personal property, because of the restrictions on it, we typically, a lot of our efforts are related to producing a past due notice. The system is mostly automated, but it does require a lot of manual adjustments to those. Making sure that the data is on the tax bills, verifying the lien. When we do the licenses, that is a very manual, intensive process currently. We'll get a list of here's everybody that's coming up for a license, and every one of those has to be individually looked up in the system to see if they owe taxes. Unfortunately, there's no way to currently automate that. That is something we'd love to be able to do in the future. If we can get the two systems to tie together, one of our partial restrictions will always be that finding a tax system that also may handle other pieces is going to be very difficult. Maine tax law is very unique, and vendors are not going to come into Maine and write a new tax program that may have other financial software, other things. So most likely we will always have a separate program for tax collection that we will have to somehow link to or tie to a licensing or permitting type system. Today's world, that certainly should be done. So that's something we'd like to move forward to. We're looking at updating our current tax software by the end of the year. We'll be on a more web-based version that may give us a few more opportunities to try to do that. So we're going to try to cut down on some of the staff time, but it is a very manual, intensive process for collection.
and I just assume because of that manual process that going out to a collection agency.
We've looked at using collection agencies in the past as well. The performance rate has not been significant. They sort of do the same thing that we do. They send out a few letters, maybe attempt to make a couple of calls. We don't necessarily have the contact information, so we don't necessarily do the calling. And then it goes on to their list, and if they happen to collect the money, they withhold 35%, and we'll get the difference. But in the past, that has not been overly productive as well. Personal property comes down to pretty much a honor system type tax in most cases, and luckily we have a lot of honest people and business owners in Bangor, but we have a few that we struggle trying to collect.
Great, thanks.
And
Questions,
that was my
comments?
question, actually, like, so those who have not paid, is it because they avoided it, they don't want to do it intentionally, or they don't have the means to pay it? So this is always, it bugs me,
Mhm.
It's-
And it's difficult for us to really determine that because there's no hardship abatement process for personal property taxes or that. So all we see from our end is we sent out a bill, didn't get paid. We sent out a reminder notice, didn't get paid. Sent out another bill showing that there's still a past due amount, never got paid.
And no return of
and-
address, like it's
Right,
it's delivered to them.
yes, it is
It's-
delivered, right. Because anytime we get one back that's undeliverable, we'll turn it back over to the assessing department and they'll research and try to find an updated address for us to resend out the notices. So it may be because of a financial situation, but from our perspective, we can't really tell that. It's more of that this person paid, this person didn't pay.
You probably spent way too much time talking about.
Yes, we
this.
just spent $644. I'm happy to move on if we get a motion.
I'm glad to understand how this works, actually, not really. I mean, because again, we had this conversation before,
Yes.
how it's not fair for some people, I mean, to abide by the law and to pay their taxes while others do not. And, I mean, that was a conversation a couple of
Yes.
years ago. Okay.
We have a motion,
Motion, second.
we have a second. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're good. All right, order, workers' comp, third party administrator.
So we'll have a council order on next week's agenda to extend our contract with Maine Municipal Association. We use them as our third-party administrator for our workers' comp program. City is self-insured for workers' comp, but there's a lot of paperwork and administrative duties that goes along with that, and so we contract that out. MMA has been our third party administrator with for our self-insurance since 2014. They do an excellent job. We work with them very easily. We have no issues with them. And we would like to continue on with them with this contract. They have proposed an annual cost of roughly $55,600. This would be a 3-year contract. So typically, if you do the math, that is under the new limit for the council. But I thought it was important that because of our self-insurance and the workers' comp, that the council gets to see this specifically, which is why it's going to be on the agenda next week. But this is just a request from staff to continue on with MMA, who does an excellent job for us. And the cost is fairly reasonable, from our opinion, at $55,600 for those administrative duties.
Thank you. Questions, comments, motion?
I make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second,
Thank you.
no doubt.
So,
Fund is still forward.
so our last item tonight
What was the
is
last item?
typically some of this would be reviewed in the audit review, which we haven't got yet. I have reached out to the auditors. I have not heard back from them today, hoping to get, I was told that we'd get final review questions this week. I was trying to get them tomorrow. I reached out, but I have not heard back from the auditor, so I will contact them in the morning and find out where we are. So we put this together as a little historical review, because we know that there's questions. The lack of the audit is reasonable that there are questions, but this is a sort of a budget to actual review, historical review for our revenues and expenditures of the general fund. It's showing the last 6 years. If we look at 2023, you can see that our budget to actual on revenues, we had a variance of a little over $500,000, which is a 0.5% in total. On the expenditure side, we were underspent on expenditures by about $4 million, which is 6%, 6.36. That, from our perspective, is a little on the high side, even though, you know, industry standards, a 10% variance in your expenditure budget is okay. 6 from Debbie and I's view is high. So looking at that, those are just the straight numbers, but those include odd things that wouldn't necessarily be in there. So on the second page, we broke down what those variances actually are made up of. So if we're looking at the 2023 revenue variances, it shows that we were over in excise tax, we were over in revenue sharing. Excise tax, we never really know from one year to the next. It's, you know, whatever comes in, which is great that we're over. Revenue sharing, we always budget what the state projects to give us. And then if it comes in higher, that's again, fantastic. The Kids Cave at Parks and Rec, the use of that coming out of the pandemic went way above what we anticipated. The concert venues, same thing coming out of the pandemic. We got some additional one-time GA funds from the state of Maine. And then there's the big number there, the 1.2 million going the other way is the third-party trash, which we've talked about before. Because we don't have that, we still budgeted as though we would still be doing the billings for those. And because we don't have that that trash hauler yet, those billings never happen. So there's that significant under collection of revenue, but you'll see a corresponding item on the expense side, because that's a bit of a wash. So there's some pilots that we received. The other negative on there is the state GA reimbursement. Again, because there was other funding available, other programs available, the GA, which is the last resort for funding, has not been utilized to the extent that it had been in the past. So we didn't receive as much money from the state, which again, you'll see a corresponding item on the expense side. So if we take out those two starred items, which are the two big, you know, odd type of transactions, overall, our revenue variance is around 2.4%, which in most any situation you can think of is well within any variance or an acceptable amount. And on the expense side, again, Most of our variances are due to vacancies, as you can see. There's the GA and the third-party trash, which are the two anomalies that are in there. We take those out, that 6% variance in expenses drops down to about 3.65. So what this is attempting to show and those same types of odd variances could be pulled out in the prior years as well. But what it attempts to show is we don't inflate the budget on the revenue side, and we don't inflate the budget on the expense side to try to, get a pool of money or bank money or anything like that. What we budget is pretty comparable to what we actually spend, had we spent those, because even though there's money savings for vacancies, had those positions been filled, that money would have been used for payroll. So it's not, our goal is not to have any inflated budget. We know that that's been a big concern about with the budget process that's going on right now. We look at what we believe is needed to provide the services that the city provides. And we're still subject to the same types of increases that all other taxpayers are seeing. So we have to factor that in. But overall, you're not seeing significant variances in our revenues or our expenses where we suddenly are making up numbers in order to get either bank money or get a pool of money. Also in here is some of our other variances. One column that we highlighted there was health insurance. One of the things that we do is we do go back near the end of each year, and we look at the departments and how much money they may have saved in health insurance, either due to vacancies, due to staff turnover, someone on the family plan gets replaced with somebody on a single plan or no insurance, which can be a significant savings over the course of the year. If there's funds available, we take those and we transfer those over into the benefit reserve. That benefit reserve is what we use to mitigate the increase of the health insurance so that we can budget at a flat 10% increase each year. But if it comes in higher than that, we can tap into the benefit reserve to try to mitigate the change, which is why we do that with the health insurance. And the council has given us the authority to do that. And then there's the transfers from the assigned fund balances that has happened over the years. Our unassigned fund balance, which is the 19,912, which we've talked about a number of times, based on anything that the auditors have talked about or questioned so far to date, that number has not changed. Nothing that they have questioned or tested has required any changes to the draft financial statements that would change that unassigned fund balance. And then we also have our assigned fund balances, which are not only our reserves that we use during the budget process, the equipment reserves, the improvement reserve, the fire reserves, the benefit reserve, all of those. It also is our reserves for our self-insurance and our workers' comp that we just talked about. We need to have reserves based on actuarial reviews in order to mitigate on the off chance there's a significant claim. We need to be able to have some money that has been built up to take care of that. So we just wanted to give a quick overview and a history to show that, from our perspective, we're pretty good at budgeting without any real significant issues, and we will continue to attempt to do that.
This is very helpful. Thank you very much. I'm really glad to know that you're not making up the numbers. Thanks for answering the question about the audit.
Yeah, I know it's coming.
Knew it was coming. Any other questions, comments? Councilor Pelletier?
Thank you. Do we have this same information for the school budget?
We do not, but I can check with the school.
Be great to see.
Thank you. And again, this is very helpful. Yeah, great. With that, I don't have anything more. We're adjourned.
Thank you.